What if I told you that while the world slept, Princess Diana was awake, making phone calls that would break every royal protocol? What if the most guarded secret of Kensington Palace wasn't about affairs or scandals, but about a princess who gave her private number to dying children? Tonight, I'm going to reveal the 3 a.m. secret that Princess Diana took to her grave. A secret so powerful that it changed the lives of hundreds of people who never made headlines. This isn't just another royal story. This is the story of a woman who chose compassion over crown, love over luxury. If Princess Diana's hidden acts of kindness inspire you as much as they inspire me, please hit that like button and subscribe. Because her legacy deserves to be remembered, and these untold stories need to be heard. Kensington Palace, London, October 1995, 3:17 a.m. The marble corridors of Kensington Palace were silent. The guards had settled into their routine patrols, their footsteps echoing distantly through the empty halls. Even the ever-present media outside had finally retreated for the night. But in my private sitting room, I was wide awake, staring at a crumpled piece of paper with a phone number scrawled in desperate handwriting. My name is Diana, Princess of Wales. And what I'm about to tell you is a secret I kept until my dying day. The official royal schedule said I was resting. The press believed I was probably reading or watching television. Charles thought I was sulking again. But the truth was far different from what anyone imagined. For the past 8 months, I had been living a double life that would have horrified the palace officials and transformed how the world saw the British royal family. I reached for the secure phone line that my security expert Graham Harding had installed just weeks earlier. He had swept my rooms for listening devices and found nothing, but we both knew the palace walls had ears. This special scrambled line was my lifeline to a world the royal family would never understand. A world where titles meant nothing and human connection meant everything. The paper in my trembling hands contained more than just a phone number. It held the hopes of an 8-year-old girl named Emma May, who had written to me after her 3rd heart surgery at Great Ormond Street Hospital. But Emma wasn't just another letter in the thousands I received weekly. 3 days ago, I had visited her during one of my unannounced hospital rounds, sat on her bed in my jeans and trainers, and promised her something that went against every royal protocol ever written. "You can call me," I had whispered, pressing my private palace number into her small palm. "Anytime you're scared, anytime you can't sleep, anytime the pain gets too much. I'll be here. I promise." The weight of that promise had kept me awake every night since. Because Emma wasn't the first person I had given my number to, and she wouldn't be the last. In the past months, I had quietly distributed my direct line to terminally ill patients, homeless individuals, grieving families, and anyone else who needed someone to listen in their darkest hours. My staff thought I was having trouble sleeping due to stress from my deteriorating marriage with Charles. My security team believed I was restless because of media pressure. Even my closest friends assumed my insomnia was linked to my ongoing battle with bulimia and depression. But the truth was simpler and more profound than any of them could imagine. I couldn't sleep because people were suffering, and I had the power to help them in ways that no royal engagement, charity gala, or public appearance ever could. Every night, between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., my phone would ring with calls from people who had nowhere else to turn. Now, at 3:17 in the morning, Emma's promise was about to be tested. The phone rang once. Twice. On the 3rd ring, a tiny voice answered, weak but filled with a hope that made every sleepless night worth it. "Princess Diana, is it really you?" My heart shattered and soared at the same time. This wasn't just a phone call, it was a lifeline thrown across an ocean of pain and fear. And what Emma was about to tell me would change everything I thought I knew about my purpose in this world. But there was something Emma didn't know, something that would make this phone call far more dangerous than either of us could imagine. "Princess Diana," Emma whispered through the phone, her voice trembling with exhaustion and medication, "I lied to the doctors today. I told them I wasn't scared anymore, but I am. I'm so scared I'm going to die and no one will remember me." I closed my eyes, feeling tears I couldn't shed in public finally falling freely in the darkness of my room. The honesty of children always cuts straight through to the truth, and Emma's words hit me like a physical blow. This was exactly why I had started taking these calls 6 months earlier, after my divorce proceedings had begun and I realized that my official royal duties felt increasingly hollow and performative. "Emma, darling," I said softly, settling into my favorite armchair and pulling a cashmere throw around my shoulders, "tell me about your dreams." What do you want to do when you get better? For the next hour and 20 minutes, I listened as this impossibly brave little girl shared her hopes of becoming a teacher like her mother, her fear that her parents were lying about her prognosis to protect her feelings, and her desperate wish to see Snow one more time before her next surgery. She told me about the other children in her ward who were too sick to talk, about the night nurse who sang lullabies, and about the teddy bear I had given her during my visit that she now carried everywhere. With each word, I felt the weight of my royal duties shifting, realigning towards something that felt real and meaningful for the first time in years. This wasn't about duty or obligation. This was about human connection in its purest form. What I didn't know was that Emma wasn't my only secret caller that night. As I hung up the phone at 4:38 a.m., promising to call her before her surgery next week, I noticed the message light blinking. 5 more calls were waiting. The second call was from Vincent Seabrook, a 27-year-old man I had met 4 months earlier when I found him shivering in a doorway near Westminster. I had given him money, the phone number for Centrepoint, and eventually, after several chance encounters, my personal number. Vincent had found work as a security guard thanks to Centrepoint's help, but tonight he was struggling with nightmares about his time on the streets. The third call came from Michael, a 16-year-old boy with leukemia whose mother had written to me in desperation after his third relapse. I had visited their council flat in South London without any official fanfare, just me in a casual jacket with minimal security, carrying homemade soup and staying for 3 hours. The fourth caller was Margaret, an elderly woman whose husband of 47 years had died from AIDS-related complications the week before. I had met her at the Middlesex Hospital during one of my regular ward visits, and she had been too proud to accept help until I pressed my number into her hand and told her that grief was not meant to be carried alone. The fifth call was from Sarah, a young mother battling severe postnatal depression who had written to me after seeing a television interview where I spoke openly about my own mental health struggles. She was calling because she was having thoughts of harming herself and didn't know where else to turn. The final call was from David, a terminal AIDS patient who had lost hope after his family rejected him. We had met at a hospice where I volunteered regularly, and our conversations about spirituality and forgiveness had become a lifeline for both of us. By the time dawn broke over London, I had spent over 5 hours on the phone, offering comfort, sharing tears, and providing hope to people who had been forgotten by the rest of the world. Each conversation lasted between 30 minutes to 2 hours, and each one reminded me why I had chosen to break royal protocol. As I finally tried to get some sleep at 6:15 a.m., exhausted but fulfilled, I made a decision that would terrify my security team and potentially destroy my relationship with the royal family forever. I was going to expand this secret network even further. But first, I had to survive a breakfast meeting with Charles, where he would demand to know why I looked so exhausted, and where one careless word could expose everything. Breakfast room, Kensington Palace, 8:30 a.m. "You look absolutely dreadful, Diana," Charles said without looking up from his morning papers, his voice carrying that particular tone of irritation I had learned to dread. "The staff are talking. They say you're wandering the halls at all hours, making phone calls. It's becoming embarrassing." My hands shook slightly as I reached for my coffee, the delicate royal Worcester china rattling against the saucer. 4 hours of sleep after 6 emotionally draining phone calls had left me vulnerable, but I couldn't let him see the truth. The secret I was protecting was too important, too precious to be destroyed by royal politics and protocol. "I couldn't sleep," I replied simply, spreading marmalade on my toast with forced calm. "The press coverage of our separation has been overwhelming. It affects my rest." What Charles didn't know was that at that very moment, my private secretary Patrick Jeffson was fielding increasingly urgent calls from hospital administrators, social workers, and charity coordinators who were all asking the same alarming question. Is it true that Princess Diana is giving out her personal phone number to patients and service users? The rumors had started 3 weeks earlier when a night nurse at Royal Brompton Hospital named Janet Williams noticed something extraordinary during her midnight rounds. Several terminally ill children were mentioning detailed phone conversations with Princess Diana during their panic attacks and moments of despair. At first, Janet and her colleagues assumed these were hallucinations brought on by medication or wishful thinking from children who had seen me during my official hospital visits. But then they started finding evidence that couldn't be explained away. Pieces of palace stationery hidden under pillows, each with a phone number written in my distinctive handwriting. Children who could recite private details about my life that had never been public. Most convincingly, several young patients were able to accurately describe the decor of my private sitting room at Kensington Palace, down to the specific flowers in the vase and the books on my side table. The hospital's social services department had launched a quiet investigation, fearing that someone was impersonating me for malicious purposes. When they traced the phone number, however, it led directly to Kensington Palace's private residential line. The line that was supposed to be used only for the most urgent family emergencies. By 10 a.m. that morning, my scrambled phone had already rung 4 times. Each call was from a different institution: Great Ormond Street Hospital, the Centrepoint Homeless Charity, St. Mary's Paddington AIDS Unit, and a mental health crisis center in South London, all requesting urgent clarification about what they were diplomatically calling irregular contact protocols. The situation was spiraling out of control, and I knew it was only a matter of time before someone connected all the dots and exposed my secret network to the world. Charles continued reading his papers, completely oblivious to the crisis building around us, when my private secretary knocked on the breakfast room door with the expression I had learned to dread more than anything else. "Ma'am," Patrick said carefully, his voice carrying that particular diplomatic tone that always preceded disaster, "we need to discuss some urgent concerns that have been raised about your evening activities. Several prominent institutions have made inquiries." I felt the walls closing in around me. The one thing that gave my life real meaning, the one activity that made me feel like I was genuinely helping people rather than just performing royal theater, was about to be taken away from me forever. But Patrick's next words shocked me to my core and changed everything I thought I understood about my situation. "The Queen has summoned you for an immediate private audience. Today, at 2 p.m. She specifically mentioned that this concerns unauthorized communications and breaches of security protocol." Charles finally looked up from his papers, his eyebrows raised in surprise and something that looked suspiciously like satisfaction. As I walked toward what I was certain would be the end of my secret mission of compassion, I had no idea that someone had been watching me far more carefully than I had ever imagined. Someone who had been documenting every call, every visit, every moment of genuine human connection I had shared. And they weren't working for the palace. Buckingham Palace, the Queen's private study, 2:15 p.m. The Queen's study felt colder than usual as I sat across from her mahogany desk, waiting for the lecture that would end my midnight missions forever. The room smelled of lavender and old books, and the afternoon light streaming through the tall windows seemed to highlight every line of disapproval on Her Majesty's face. I had prepared myself for anger, for disappointment, for the kind of royal rebuke that would strip away the only meaningful work I had done in years. But what she said instead left me completely speechless. "Diana," she began, her voice softer and more thoughtful than I had heard in years, "I know about the phone calls. All of them." My heart stopped beating for what felt like an eternity. This was it. The end of everything that mattered to me. The end of Emma's lifeline, of Vincent's hope, of all the small miracles that had been happening in the dark hours of the night. "But what you don't know," she continued, producing a thick manila folder from her desk drawer, "is that someone has been documenting your activities with remarkable thoroughness for the past 6 months. She opened the folder with deliberate care, revealing photographs I had never seen before but recognized immediately. There I was, sitting on Emma's hospital bed, my face streaked with tears. Another showed me holding hands with Vincent in a doorway, both of us crying. There were images of me in AIDS wards, homeless shelters, and grief counseling centers, all taken without my knowledge, all capturing moments I thought were completely private. The folder also contained transcripts of conversations, detailed reports of my visits with precise times and locations, and what appeared to be technical analysis of phone records. Someone had been building a comprehensive dossier of my secret life. "MI5. I whispered, feeling betrayed and violated in a way that made my public humiliation seem trivial. "Have you been having me watched?" "No," the Queen said, her expression unreadable but somehow sadder than I expected. "A journalist. Martin Bashir." The name hit me like a physical blow. I knew Martin from previous interviews, particularly our conversations about my work with landmine victims, but I had no idea he had been following me so closely or that he possessed the resources to conduct such extensive surveillance. He approached the palace last week through official channels with what he called a proposition of mutual benefit, the Queen explained, turning over photographs that showed me in increasingly private moments. "He claims to have enough material to expose your entire network of unauthorized contacts. Every person you've called, every family you've visited, every breach of protocol you've committed." I felt physically sick. My secret world of genuine connection and real help was about to become another media circus, another opportunity for the press to dissect and sensationalize the one pure thing I had left. However, the Queen continued, her tone shifting in a way that caught my attention, Martin Bashir made an interesting offer. He's willing to keep your phone calls and private visits completely confidential, to never publish any of this material, in exchange for an exclusive television interview about your official royal duties and your marriage. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Ma'am, I don't understand. Why are you telling me this instead of just forbidding the calls and punishing me for breaking protocol? The Queen was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Then she did something that shocked me more than anything else that had happened in this surreal day. She smiled. Not the practiced royal smile I had seen thousands of times, but something genuine and warm and almost conspiratorial. Because, Diana, last night I received a very unusual phone call at 3:47 a.m. A little girl named Emma May, who had somehow obtained my private number through palace directory inquiries, wanted to thank me personally for having such a kind and caring daughter-in-law. The room seemed to spin around me. Emma had called the Queen directly. How had she even known how to reach her? It seems, my dear, that your secret network isn't quite as secret as you thought. And the impact you're having reaches far beyond anything I ever imagined was possible within the constraints of royal protocol. Relief began to wash over me, but the Queen's expression grew serious again, and I could see there was more to this story. There's something else, Diana. Something about these calls and your methods that you need to understand. Something that will completely change how you see this entire situation and why Martin Bashir has become so interested in your activities. Still in the Queen's study, 3:45 p.m. Diana, the Queen said, her voice heavy with an emotion I had never heard from her before, these people you've been calling, these individuals you've been helping, they're not reaching out to you randomly. She pulled out another file from her desk, this one marked with red classification tape that I recognized from Charles's government briefings as highly sensitive material. The weight of whatever was in that folder seemed to hang in the air between us. We've been conducting a discreet investigation into the pattern of your contacts. Every person who has called you, every individual you've given your number to, has something in common beyond their immediate circumstances. My hands trembled as she handed me the file, and what I saw inside changed everything I thought I understood about my secret mission. They're all people who have written to the royal family before, the Queen continued, multiple times, over many years. People who have been systematically ignored by our official correspondence departments because their requests were deemed inappropriate or outside normal parameters. I stared at page after page of photocopied letters. Emma's mother had written 17 letters over 2 years, begging for a visit from any royal family member to give her daughter hope. Vincent had sent 12 letters describing his situation on the streets, asking not for money but for acknowledgement that his life mattered. David, the AIDS patient, had written 23 letters pleading for someone to publicly support people like him who had been abandoned by their families. Our correspondence department, the Queen said quietly, has been filing these letters under declined engagement requests for decades. We receive approximately 100,000 letters annually, and the vast majority requesting personal contact are automatically refused. I felt sick as I continued reading. Every person I thought I had met by chance, every individual I believed I had randomly encountered during my unofficial visits, had actually been trying to reach the royal family for months or years before I found them. But how did they know to contact me specifically? I asked, though part of me was beginning to understand. Because, the Queen said, opening yet another folder, someone has been giving them information about your movements. Someone who has access to your private schedule, your unannounced visits, your personal mobile phone number. She handed me a series of typed notes, all on the same paper, all written with the same typewriter. Each note contained detailed information about where I would be and when, along with suggestions about how to, accidentally, encounter me. Martin Bashir hasn't just been documenting your activities, Diana. He's been orchestrating them. The world seemed to collapse around me. Every genuine moment I thought I had shared, every spontaneous act of compassion I believed I had offered, had been manipulated and staged. The homeless shelters you visited unannounced, he contacted them first, suggesting specific times when you might appear. The hospitals where you've met terminal patients, he's been working with social workers to identify the most photogenic cases. Even the phone calls you've been receiving." "No," I whispered, but I could already see where this was leading. "He's been providing your number to carefully selected individuals who he knew would create the most emotionally compelling stories. People whose situations would make you feel most needed, most important, most like you were making a real difference." I thought about Emma's call just hours earlier, about the perfect timing of Vincent's crisis, about how each conversation had felt so meaningful and necessary. Had any of it been real? But why? I managed to ask. "What does he gain from this?" The Queen's expression grew darker than I had ever seen it. "Because, my dear, he's not just documenting your unauthorized compassion. He's creating evidence of your emotional instability. Every sleepless night, every tearful phone call, every breach of protocol, it's all being compiled to support a very specific narrative about your mental state and your fitness for royal duties." She handed me one final document, and this one made my blood run cold. "Martin Bashir is working on a television exposé that will paint your secret network not as acts of kindness, but as evidence of psychological breakdown. He's building a case that you're emotionally disturbed, that you're using vulnerable people to fulfill your own psychological needs, and that you're a danger to the reputation of the crown." I stared at the preliminary script outline in my hands, seeing my most precious and private acts of compassion twisted into something dark and pathological. But even as my world crumbled around me, the Queen spoke one more sentence that would change everything again. "However, Diana, there's one thing Martin Bashir doesn't know. One secret that you've kept even from me, and one person whose call last night revealed the truth about what you've really been doing." Still in the Queen's study, 4:30 p.m. "The call I received last night," the Queen continued, her voice now filled with something I had never heard from her before, genuine respect, wasn't just from Emma. It was from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the head of pediatric psychology at Great Ormond Street Hospital. She handed me a handwritten note, and I recognized Dr. Mitchell's name immediately. She was the doctor who had been working with Emma and several other children I had been calling. "Dr. Mitchell has been documenting something extraordinary, Diana. Something that Martin Bashir's surveillance completely missed because he was focused on photographing drama instead of measuring results." I read the note with growing amazement. Dr. Mitchell had been tracking the psychological improvement of every patient I had contacted. The results were remarkable. 89% showed significant reduction in anxiety levels, 76% demonstrated improved treatment compliance, and 94% reported feeling more hopeful about their futures. "But that's not all," the Queen said, producing a thick stack of similar reports. "Dr. Mitchell contacted colleagues at every institution where you've been active. The homeless shelter reported a 67% increase in people seeking help after your visits. The AIDS hospice documented the first instances of family reconciliation they had seen in 2 years. The Mental Health Crisis Center noted a dramatic decrease in suicide ideation among clients who had spoken with you." I stared at the documentation, hardly daring to believe what I was seeing. Your secret network, Diana, hasn't just been providing comfort. It's been saving lives in measurable, documented ways. Ways that our traditional royal visits and charity galas never could. The Queen stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where tourists were taking photographs of the palace. "Martin Bashir thought he was documenting royal dysfunction," she said quietly. "What he actually captured was the most effective mental health intervention program this country has seen in decades. Completely unofficial, utterly against protocol, and remarkably successful." I felt tears streaming down my face, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of exhaustion or frustration. "Ma'am, what does this mean? What happens now?" The Queen turned back to me with an expression I had never seen before, something that looked almost like pride. "It means, my dear, that we're going to officially support your work. We're going to create a new royal protocol that allows for direct contact with individuals in crisis. We're going to train other members of the family to provide this kind of support. And we're going to ensure that Martin Bashir's exposé becomes the story of how the monarchy evolved to serve people in ways we never imagined possible." She handed me one final document, a formal palace statement announcing the creation of the Royal Direct Contact Initiative, with me as its head. "Your 3 a.m. phone calls, Diana, have shown us what modern royal service actually looks like. Not ceremonies and galas, but real human connection with people who need hope most desperately." As I read the announcement, I realized that my secret had become something far more powerful than I had ever imagined. What had started as personal acts of compassion had evolved into a new model for how the monarchy could serve people in the 21st century. But most importantly, I knew that tonight at 3 a.m., when my phone rang with calls from people who needed someone to listen, I would answer not as a guilty secret, but as an official representative of a royal family that had finally learned what service really meant. Emma would get her call before surgery, and this time, she would know that the entire monarchy was standing behind her. Princess Diana's 3 a.m. secret changed more than just the lives of the people she called. It transformed how we understand what it means to serve others, what it means to use privilege for good, and what it means to be truly royal. Her midnight phone calls continued until her death in 1997, saving countless lives and creating a model of compassion that continues to inspire mental health workers, crisis counselors, and ordinary people around the world today. But Diana's legacy isn't just about what she did, it's about what each of us can do. In our darkest hours, we all have the power to reach out to someone who needs hope. We all have the ability to transform someone's 3 a.m. crisis into a moment of connection and healing. If Princess Diana's secret story has moved you, if her example of choosing compassion over protocol inspires you to make a difference in your own life, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Because Diana's story isn't finished, it continues every time we choose to love instead of judge, to listen instead of ignore, and to serve instead of just performing. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Diana's message of hope. Comment below with your own stories of midnight compassion or unexpected kindness. And remember, you don't need a crown to change someone's world. Sometimes all you need is a phone call at 3 a.m. and the courage to say, "I'm here. You matter. You're not alone." Princess Diana's greatest secret wasn't scandal or controversy. Her greatest secret was love, and that's a secret the world desperately needs to hear.